Let's open up with this one from Peter O'Neill. What do you think of floating this turn check raise at Bovada 2-4? Hero opens King 10, the cutoff to 8, big blind calls. Flop Jack 9, 2, check, hero bets 12 and villain calls. Turn ace, check, hero bets 28 and villain raises to 90. Hero calls. I don't like this float, and the reason is because you have a lot of other better hands you could float with. I think it would be way more reasonable with a hand like Queen 10 suited or 10-8 suited or a flush draw and a straight draw. But here's the thing. If you're going to float hands like King 10, you're just going to float so many hands on the turn, right? And then what's going to happen is on the river, you're going to have all of these really weak, shitty hands, and if they check, if you try to bluff, you're going to have too many hands that you want to bluff with. So you're going to want to pick better hands on the turn to float than this. That way, you don't really have that many good hands here. You could have a few aces, maybe, and then also some sets, 2 pairs. But in general, you're going to have a lot of draws here, and you want to be careful with it and make sure you pick the right hands to bet. Sorry, the right hands to call. So I think this is a pretty safe hand to put into the turn fold after you bet range. River ace of clubs, villain shoves, and hero folds. And really, the fact, I think this is a fine fold in the river, but this kind of exemplifies my point that these hands really need to be folds on the turn. Because think about how many folds you're going to have here on the river if you're going to have King 10. King 10, King Queen, Queen 10, 10-8 suited. Flush draws, diamonds, hearts. So I think you got to let this guy go on the turn. As far as his raise goes, it makes some sense. He could have a hand like ace jack off, ace 9 off. He could have a set in the flop, trap it, and then do this on the turn. So I don't really mind this. I don't really mind the raise. Not my favorite. I probably wouldn't have raises here, but he can definitely have a range of hands to raise for value. And I think you got a little bit too carried away on getting it really into the mindset of what does he have, rather than thinking of the mindset of what are all of the hands that I can have. Think about all of your hands in your range in these spots, guys. That's a good question, though. Playing in a W something. I don't know what this means. Under the gun limps, I 3x from 27 big blinds with a bud with King Queen suited. Seems fine. Small blind circuit reg re-shoves 14 blinds that folds to make call or fold. Ugh. That's a tough one, man. And man's actually a really tough one. So let me think about this. You're calling. Let's get the calculator out. The calculator out. All right. So 14 plus 14 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. The 1 is the limp, the ante, and the big blind. Okay. 31. That's so you're calling 13 to win 31. 13 divided by 31. 42%. So you need 42% to call. Do I have like some kind of equity thing on this computer? Do I? Really? I don't. Does this work for it? So you need 42% to call. So I don't know if I have a program that does this on this computer. So I guess if you need 42% to call, you can plug in some different ranges and go with it. I think you probably need to call. Sorry, you're calling 11 to win 31, not 14. What am I talking about? 11 divided by 31. Oh, I did the math wrong. You need 35%. You're going to have to call. You have to call. You can have hands like 10s or ace jack. Yeah, mandatory call all day. Reno Fed says, at Doug Polk Poker, on what boards will you have a raising range and why not? Does it depend on position, action, etc.? Generally what this boils down to, man, is can I have the nuts, or like hands that are essentially the nuts? On boards where, like, let's just give you an example. Let's say that under the gun opens and you call in the big blind. The flop is like ace, king, 9. I don't really have aces or kings. I'm re-raising those pre-flop. So I would not have a check raise range on that board because I don't have any of the strong hands. My opponent does. That's an example of a board I wouldn't want to have a check raise on. A flop like 8-7-6, same action, I would definitely want to have check raise. I can have 10-9, I can have 9-4, I can have 5-4. In fact, I can have all of these straights. He can't even really have 9-5 or 5-4. So, those are extreme examples. Clearly not the first one. Clearly we should in the second one. Then it gets kind of like into a gray area. There's some boards where you might want to have check raises, some boards where you might not. That kind of gets more down to personal preference. I think that, if you look at the way high-stakes players play, it's definitely a lot of different takes on whether you should or shouldn't have raised ranges on those boards. That said, I tend to lean a little more on the not having raises than most people, because if you raise all your good hands, it makes it so when you call, you're kind of weak, right? So in general, I would say raises are okay, but if it's a board where you don't have any of the really strong hands and your opponent does, then you shouldn't be raising on the flop. How loose to open at 6 max micros? As loose as 7 suited or knit up? We have pre-flop range charts actually on Upswing Poker. You should generally just stick to those. 7 suited, this doesn't say what position. So I would say just go with the charts that we've made. Any general tips on how aggressive to play micros today? I would say I would be a little bit more aggressive pre-flop, and then post-flop I would tread lightly, especially versus river raises. River raises tend to be very value heavy at low stakes because people don't really know how to bluff, and they always know to get their value. And that's a good general rule. People will always get their value. If they have a boat, they're going to raise. But a lot of times to bluff, they have to figure out which hands they want to bluff with, and that's a lot harder. So be careful on the river at the micros, guys. All right, let's look at a hand. Call, raise, call. Reasonable. Bet. I'd like to see a little bit of a bigger bet here than this. I think you're just letting him draw with a bunch of different hands against this bet size. Call. Now I would actually like to see a smaller side. I'd like to see like 150. Because in order to bet here, you have to have aces, kings, or a queen. It's not that many hands. And if you bet aces too big, you can't really bet aces because they could have trips. So I'd like to see 150 here instead of 250. River is... You should probably check fold this. I mean, I know what you're thinking. You can have 7-8, you could have Jack 10, you could have a flush draw, but he can also just have a queen, or you know, probably not 9. I guess he's saying he has a queen or nothing, and you're saying that you block king, queen, queen, jack. Maybe this is okay. The main things I don't like are flop size, turn size. River call is somewhat reasonable, especially without a heart. So I don't mind this. I just don't like the prior sizes. I also think at lower stakes in general you should just be folding here, but whatevs. Very questionable. And by the way, this turn float, this kind of goes back to that king 10 hand we just looked at. This guy floats hands like this on the turn. He's going to way over bluff, and he's going to get picked off by king jack, right? So he could have helped himself by folding on the turn. I have less problem with the river there than the prior bet sizes. After the lab, I'm wondering where to go next for studying. Any suggestions? Also, how do we create a 4-bet strat? Thanks. Well, as far as after the lab goes, Upswing's working on a few things that will be more advanced products down the road. But can't say too much there yet, guys. Also, as far as creating a 4-bet strategy, we will add some more 4-bet stuff into the lab. We'll make sure that this gets taken care of. I think do we have some basic 4-bet stuff? If not, we will make that a priority. And we'll take one more question here. Let's look at one last hand. I don't really want to go to the U stake. All right, we're gonna look at one last hand here by Kyle O. Omaha, high, low. Is that right? Okay, this is my specialty. Okay, open, call, 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 call. Second nuts. Okay, now make sure this is not troll. I don't think it is. Okay, second nuts here is actually very dicey. You're dead against ace queen, and hands like sets and flush draws have a lot of equity against you, so you have to tread super lightly. Checks through. Check. Okay. I would say this. Okay, I would say I don't mind bet or check. Okay, they're both fine. It's unlikely that anyone here has ace queen. Players 2, 3, and 4 are not going to check ace queen on the flop, and player 5 might check ace queen, but kind of unlikely. So you're either chopping or good here. I don't mind check calling, so you can have some straights in your checking range, but if you do decide to bet, you really need to bet like the full size of the pot here. Because if they have clubs or diamonds or a set, they're going to call you, and you're giving them a profitable price to do so. So I would really like to see you bet 9K to try to thin the field out. I guess player 2 actually really could have ace queen. Because player 2 opened and then checked. So he could have ace queen to be trapped. I think players 3 and 4 are much less likely than player 2 to have ace queen. As played, I think fold. Because you can have ace queen, right? If you have ace queen, what are you going to do? You're going to bet the turn, right? So you have ace queen and queen 9, and then that's basically it. Maybe some bluffs. You're going to fold your bluffs. Like if you had a hand like queen, queen 4, you'd fold that. Queen, queen 4, 2, or whatever. And then if you have queen 9, you can fold. And if you have ace queen, you can call. When he raises you here on the turn, he doesn't know that you have queen 9. You know, he knows very well you could have ace queen. So if he has hands like sets or set plus draw, he's generally going to be checking here. Sorry, he's generally going to be calling here because you can just have all of those strong hands. So I would like to see you bet fold here, use a bigger size, and also have ace queen so that you can actually go on with ace queen. You don't have to put it in here. Yeah. All right, nice hand. Well played. In general, what would you like to do with pocket fives from the small blind with 24 big blinds to a min raise versus a avid opener? Average, you mean? Open from the cutoff with 50. I would say you can flat or jam. I think both are okay. Versus loose players, I probably lean towards jamming. And you actually have a good chunk of fold equity at this stack. So I would say in general, probably jam. Against tighter people, I could see flatting being okay. Fold is certainly not on the table. I know the small blind sucks because your odds are way worse. But remember, there's still antes, guys. So you gotta take a flop. Also, the big blind's gonna mainly see a flop as well. So I would say call and then try to evaluate from there. To be honest, I'd probably jam. I would say most likely jam. How do you deal with the swings? Idea for new course elite level variance training on how to cope with huge swings. I don't think that it's something that you can kind of train. I think some people just naturally deal with swings way better than other people do. For me, I guess the way that I've always looked at it is, I've always looked at it like, you can't really control the results, right? You know, you're going to play your best, and then whatever is going to happen is going to happen. So why get upset about things that you can't control? What you should try to control is bringing the best game that you have to the table. So some people, they have a really hard time with swings, and I guess that's kind of where tilt comes into play. I can say from first-hand experience, I have seen very, very few people at the top level in poker that actually tilt when they're losing. Some people that kind of come to mind is maybe some, I guess, tiltier people. Jungle definitely rages super hard when he's losing, but I'm not really sure that his play actually gets that much worse. I just think it's like kind of part of his persona when he's losing. In general, when I see a high-stakes player losing, they're just super chill because they know this, like, poker is what got them here, and whatever happens, whether it's win or lose, you know, they're going to be okay. They always take the right piece of themselves. And it's just a game, and the people that play that game the best are the ones that are going to make the most money. As far as how to deal with it, I think that if you do take a beat, particularly in cash game formats, if you feel yourself getting kind of tilted, just walk away from the table. There's no shame in walking away and living to fight another day. You know, there's no shame in that. If you feel like things are going really badly, there's no shame in quitting. If you think the table's not as good anymore, there's no reason you can't just leave. Learn kind of how you work, understand yourself, and then you can know, what you should be doing. For me, I can kind of just play until I'm done, and I know that I'm not going to tilt. But if you don't have that ability, it's more important to recognize that and cut it off than it is to just like try and power through. Because if you're playing your D game and you're just trying to power through, you're just going to lose money. Walk away. Poker's not going anywhere, guys. Look, how many years has poker been around, right? Lord knows. Since the old Western gambling days. And it's not going to go anywhere. So just remember, if you feel yourself starting to tilt, starting to not play, your A game, starting to feel emotional about the swings, move down in the stakes, live to fight another day, take a week off, come back strong, and you're going to be okay. That's what I would say, man. So there's nothing you can really do for a training course on that, though. Tap out Taz. This is from Poker Heine. 60 big blinds with jacks. Mid position opens to 40K. I raised at 120K. You did not include the big blind here. But I'm going to go ahead and say it's 20K. Okay. So mid position opens. You 3-bet to 122. Button moves all in. Opener raises to 330. Is this... This is my hand. This is my hand from the 1-drop. Wow, this is a very, very clever hand history question, but it's a little bit... Actually, okay, so the hand went down like this, guys. Hijack opens to 40K. I 3-bet with jacks to 122K in the cutoff. Small blind calls it off all in. Opener re-raises to 330. And I have 1.1 total is actually the hand. So I think this was very close. I could have jammed, or I could have called, or I could have folded. They were really all kind of on the table. The reason that I elected to jam was because the small blind is getting it all in with a pretty wide range. And the opener, if he has a hand like 10s or 9s or ace-king or ace-queen, he's actually really very much incentivized to try and 4-bet to isolate it versus the all-in. So when I jam here, I think I actually do have some fold equity, and I'm also going to get it in against a range that looks something like jacks plus ace-king. Given the pot odds, I think I'm getting that price, given there will be a few times where he has, like, let's say 10s or 9s and 4-bet folds, or ace-queen and 4-bet folds. So really, all of those things lead me to believe this. Also, this player was pretty aggressive, and I decided to go with it. Don't get me wrong, this is a tough spot, right? I'm not like, yes, jacks, take it to the bank, but... Sometimes in those close spots, when you do have a good hand, especially at higher stakes, you kind of just have to go. You just have to go for it. And then, yeah, if you run into queens plus, it sucks. But how often is it that compared to ace king or maybe an occasional lighter value bet? And that's really the math there. So I don't mind fold, but I also don't mind jam. And think about what happens if he 4-bets 10s to isolate the all-in and we fold jacks. We just get crushed. Or what if he 4-bets ace-king and we fold jacks? We also get crushed. So to prevent that, I only need about, like, let's just say he always calls. I probably need about 38% equity to put in my stack, 40% equity. If he always calls, I'm probably a little bit under that. I'm probably like 35% equity or so. So it's a few percent mistake if he always calls. But if he ever has folds, then it becomes plus EV for me. So that's what I think. I like how you phrased this, though, like it was your hand. But it wasn't your hand. It was my hand. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions here. Cash games or tournaments for building a bankroll? I would say that tournaments are probably better, particularly the lower stakes. The reason is that the rake in them is not going to be nearly as high. Small stakes cash games, especially on some of the sites that have like bad rake back programs, can be devastating in terms of big blinds per 100. So I would have to recommend tournaments. The only thing I would say is make sure you have enough buy-ins, guys. Don't just like put a $100 roll online and play a $10 tournament. That's nuts, okay? I would never do that. That's absurd. Play $1 tournaments, $2 tournaments, maybe a $3 tournament. Don't even play a $5 tournament. You're not bankrolled for that, man. Just because the amount is small, don't treat it like it doesn't matter. It still matters. Be responsible. Doesn't matter if you have $1 million and you're debating playing a 10K, or you have $1,000 and you're debating playing a $1 tournament or $10. You know what I'm saying, guys. Be responsible. Make good decisions. And base it around your bankroll. I would say around probably like 50 cent 1, 1, 2, 2, 4. It can make sense to play more cash. And if you're on a site with good rake back or low rake in general, it can make sense for you to just be playing cash from the get-go. But I'd have to recommend sit and goes and tournaments out of the gate. All right, and we'll take one more question here. Hero is on the button 600, and the villain is in the small line with 1,000. ABC rate opens. Sorry. You open with Jack 2 of diamonds. The villain calls in the small blind. Jack, Jack 8, check, we bet, they raise, we call. Okay, that's fine. So we're going to have a bunch of jacks, could have 8-8, could have some draws, etc. Flop is obviously totally standard. Turn, they check, we bet, very small. No, sorry, we bet actually maybe a little bit too big. I would like to see you use a little bit of a smaller size here. When people check raise then check, their range is very polarized. They either have nothing, turned a pair, or they have a good hand. So you want to use small sizes because it kind of most optimally exploits that range. Yeah, it's not that good against specifically a king, but if he has a hand like queen 10, 10, 9, low spades, he actually has a really tough decision if you bet, like, let's say $30 here, right? Kind of has to call with the flush draw, might have to call 10, 9, but if you have a boat, he's stone dead. So I'd use a smaller size here, and it lets me kind of bluff more, and it puts them in a very tough spot with a polarized range, but your line's still fine. River queen, and he leads 130. Ooh, queen of spades. Okay, well, I don't think calling is very good here. What hands are reasonable for him to be bluffing with? 10-9 gets there, spades get there. I can't really think of bluffs. So the question is, do we want to jam or do we want to fold? And they both make some sense. The problem with jamming is if you jam every jack that you have here, you're going to bluff way too much. You're going to jam a lot of jacks. So you have to pick jacks that are better to jam. I think it's better to jam with a jack like Jack 10 or Jack 9, where you actually can block some other hands they can have, like straights, or maybe, you know, Jack 10 with a spade. Jack 2 of diamonds seems like, you know, of all the jacks you can have here, maybe one of the ones that needs to just get mucked, right? Because you can have Jack 10, Jack 9, Jack 7, Jack 6, etc. So I think probably just fold this jack, but totally reasonable to work in some jams here with just a jack representing a full house. Don't mind your line, would probably like to choose a different hand. Yeah. I don't really think he has a straight. Maybe he does. But I think he has a flush or a boat. Sorry, yeah, flush or a boat. Probably a flush, really. Also, if he has a flush that's like King X of spades, he might convince himself you don't have many boats because he has a king. So I would try to be careful, and I'd try to use a jack that has a better other card to go with it. Good question, though. All right, let's get back on the action. Good questions, guys. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you're interested in more highlights and updates from Upswing Poker. Oh. What? What? No 10, no ace. Nice. And we hold with our middle pair, and somehow we win? All right. I love it. Ace Jack here on the button. That was a hand that just happened.